Hey, I'm Meg. Welcome to our channel. Now relax and let me tell you a story. The monotonous rumble of the train wheels blended with the strange patterns of morning sleep, transforming into a secretary's typing in a surreal office, or the rhythmic beat of a giant, plush heart floating between clouds. Anna stretched, her hands reaching for the luggage rack above. She pulled her face out from the collar of her jacket and thought, a secretary. Where did that weird image come from? Maybe it was from a movie she'd watched the day before. And that heart in the clouds, it was actually kind of beautiful. Where am I? She wondered. She felt around and it hit her. She was in the top bunk of a passenger car on an Amtrak train. Since she had just woken up and couldn't remember where she was, it could only mean one thing. It was the first morning of the trip. 2 days to go. This always happened to Anna. On the first morning after a night on the train, she never remembered where she was, why, or how she'd gotten there. Only when her brain finally started to fire on all cylinders did she piece together the where, how, and why of her journey. She was going home to see her mom and hug her sister. And don't be shocked, but sometimes Anna was almost ashamed to admit it. She wasn't sure who she missed more, her mother or her mother's cooking. Anna was a student. She lived far, far away from her hometown, a remote village tucked away in the mountains of West Virginia, where they didn't even get reliable electricity until she was in the 3rd grade. In the winter, classes started early, and at night, she did her homework by the light of a kerosene lamp. But even coming from such an isolated place, she had managed to get into a major university in Chicago. All on her own, no help, no connections, no fancy prep courses. Anna liked to study. Well, at first, it was out of necessity, but eventually, she grew to love it. She was a bit of an outsider among the other kids in her village. Even though the town was small, there were plenty of boys and girls to play with. But lately, everyone had started to leave, or at least send their kids to live with relatives closer to the big cities. It used to be that no one was scared off by the hardship. Everyone lived there, worked there, families were large. The old women would say, "Back in our day, we didn't have electricity, and we made a life here just fine." Now that the power lines had finally arrived, everyone decided to leave. Maybe it was because, with light to read by at night, they started reading books and realized their little town was too small for their dreams. Anna had only one sister. Most of the other kids had 5 or 6 siblings. Sarah, Anna's mother, only had one other daughter, and she was a widow. Anna's father had gone to work in a big city and never came back. At first, he sent a little money, but then he just vanished. The rumors were that he'd remarried and had other children. Anna's mother refused to believe it. "How could he? Who gave him permission?" she'd say, outraged. "He never even divorced me." But he was alive. Yes, Anna had seen him with her own 2 eyes. It was during one of her school breaks. On her way home after a long time away, she decided to track down her father. From the bus stop to the address she had scribbled down, it was a 2-hour drive down a dirt road. When she arrived, he wasn't there. But that woman, was. She opened the door, offered Anna tea, and asked her not to hold a grudge. She said she understood everything. But what was there to understand? Growing up or not growing up, it was all the same. Her father was a traitor, and this woman, she seemed nice. Anna almost felt sorry for her. What kind of love was that, to live in hiding with a married man, unable to even properly claim her own children? Anna never told her mother or her sister. Let it weigh on her father's conscience. Besides, she didn't want to hurt her mom, who preferred to believe in love. It was easier that way. She had lived for almost 50 years as if she were married, not quite a widow, not quite single. It was an undefined state, but one she accepted. However, Anna hadn't become an outcast because of this. There was still fun to be had in the village. In the winter, the kids would slide down a steep hill on pieces of cardboard. The problem was, the hill was far, almost 2 miles away, and it bordered a creek. In the winter, when the creek bed dried up a bit and the ground hardened, the boys would start testing the slope. First one would go down, then two, then three, and soon it was a crowd. Anna was very close friends with Lucas, the son of their neighbor, who was also named Sarah. They were in the same classes and had similar interests. One day, at the start of winter, they decided to build a ramp to go down alone, before everyone else. They wanted to be the first. That silly childhood vanity. Or maybe they just wanted to have fun by themselves. The earth was dry but still soft. The ground was unstable, but they didn't realize it. Anna went down first. Lucas insisted, saying she was lighter, that the ground would hold, and it did. They went down several times, laughing, having the time of their lives. They didn't hear the earth groan. On Lucas's last run, the ground gave way. A thin crater opened up, and he vanished into the hole. Anna didn't understand what had happened. Then she screamed, running to the hole. It was reckless. She could have fallen in too, but the earth held firm. She managed to pull him out by the collar of his shirt. They crawled out to the edge of the path. It was getting dark, and the night's chill was starting to bite. Their clothes were dirty and damp. As they were heading home, a car appeared. It stopped on the road. The windows were fogged up, the roof covered in leaves, as if it had just driven out of some forgotten place. "Let's go," said Lucas. "Are you crazy?" Anna shot back. "You don't get in cars with strangers. Didn't your mom ever tell you that?" "I'm shivering, Anna. If I walk all the way back, I'll get sick. My mom won't let me out of the house until Mardi Gras." "We can just walk fast and we'll be there," she insisted. "Do what you want, I'm going." And he walked toward the passenger door. "Lucas, no," Anna yelled. "Relax, it'll be fine." He got in the car. She stood there, paralyzed, as if someone had pulled her back into that dark hole. That was the last time she ever saw Lucas, and no one else ever saw him again. The car was covered in leaves and dried mud, looking almost like a forgotten mound on the side of the road. Through the fogged-up windows, Anna couldn't see who was driving. She couldn't remember the license plate either. She probably couldn't have seen it anyway. They searched for Lucas all over the village. They called the sheriff, the state troopers. His mother, Sarah, started wearing black overnight. One day, in a fit of grief, she lunged at Anna, screaming that she had lured him there, that it was her fault. They took Anna to see a psychologist. After a while, the psychologist started coming to her house. The adults came to a conclusion. Lucas had fallen into a hole, gotten hurt, and wandered off, lost in the woods. The rest of it, the car, was just a figment of a little girl's imagination. They said that's how a child's mind works, inventing unreal things to cope with trauma. But Anna didn't understand half of what they were saying. How could she have invented that damn car? She saw it. Lucas got into it. Sure, she didn't know the make or model. She was a kid. Even now, as an adult, she divides cars into just two categories, trucks and sedans. She didn't see the color either, because it was covered in leaves and it was getting dark. But she knew she wasn't crazy. Nobody believed her. Everyone decided that Lucas had fallen into some hole and that Anna was making up stories. From that day on, no one wanted to be her friend. She was only 11 years old. She started spending all her free time in the school library. She dove into books, first as a distraction, then she got hooked, and then she decided she was going to get out of that village where everyone looked at her sideways. To this day, Anna is sure that car was real. Someone took Lucas. Maybe he's still alive somewhere, but she doesn't understand who would take him, where, or why. When she moved to Chicago, she thought she'd never go back to that village. But a week later, she was already counting the days until break. She wanted to see her mom and her sister. It didn't matter what the others said or how they looked at her. She knew she wasn't guilty. The idea to go down that hill wasn't even hers. It was Lucas's. Whenever she could, she'd turn in her exams early to catch the first train home, even if it was just for a week. Life in her shared student apartment wasn't easy. There was no one to help, and she wouldn't even consider asking for anything from the father who had abandoned them. Her mother had told her right from the start not to send money home. She still had her sister to take care of. So Anna started working. But where could a student work? Only night shifts. And studying medicine, the only job she found was in the university hospital's morgue. It wasn't exactly a choice, it was what was available. Not as a doctor or a nurse, of course. She just logged the bodies coming in and going out. At night, you could even get a little sleep, since none of the clients were going to run away. At first, she was terrified. Her skin would crawl, her stomach would churn, but over time, she got used to it. You get used to anything, she thought. "Why are you shaking like a leaf, girl?" her shift partner, an older woman, asked on Anna's first day. "It's just, there are dead bodies everywhere," Anna replied without thinking. The woman smiled. "And where do you think you are exactly?" "This is the morgue." "Yeah," Anna mumbled, feeling dizzy. "But you're scared, aren't you?" "I am." "Oh, silly girl, the dead are the most harmless ones. They won't hurt you or say a thing. It's the living you should fear." Anna never forgot that advice. She started to treat the dead with respect and calm, and she became much more suspicious of the living. The morgue itself was cold, with white-tiled walls and floors. In the center was a long, plastic-covered table. All around were glass cabinets with slides, jars of samples, and the strong, overpowering smell of formaldehyde. The air conditioning kept the room frigid. There were no windows. The light came from motion-activated fluorescent bulbs to save energy. Everything in there was designed to preserve the bodies. The thick concrete walls insulated the space. The lack of windows prevented any outside interference. It was like being caught between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Anna stayed in a small side room, which was also used by the anatomy residents and security guards. The room was connected to the morgue by a dark, windowless corridor. Everything felt grim. It wasn't just physically cold. The atmosphere could chill you to the bone. And it was in this environment that something strange began to happen. But before that mystery could fully reveal itself, Anna was about to experience something completely unexpected. Something that would not only change the course of her life, but would cause her to cross paths with someone she could never have imagined. After she started working in the morgue, Anna began to look forward to her vacations and train rides home even more eagerly. It was a break not only from her studies, but also from the cold, heavy atmosphere of her job. She wanted to be surrounded by living people. This time, however, Anna wasn't traveling alone to visit her mother and sister. She was getting married, and she was bringing her fiancé with her. She was excited to introduce him to her family and show him the places where she grew up. The story of how they met was unusual, and in a way, it was only possible because of Anna's job at the morgue. Who knows, if she hadn't been there, he might not even be alive. And it's best to get this out of the way now. Carter was rich, very rich. He had inherited a massive fortune from his father. Anna didn't even know the full extent of it. How many houses, how many companies? And she didn't want to know. She didn't care about that. Many people, hearing this part of the story, would think, oh, sure she didn't, that she played innocent and snagged an heir. How convenient. But only someone who didn't know Anna would think that. First of all, she fell in love with Carter before she knew he was a millionaire. Second, she made it clear from the beginning that she wouldn't accept expensive gifts. In fact, for this trip, Carter wanted to charter a helicopter to make the journey in a few hours instead of spending 3 days on a train. Anna refused. As we know, she loved trains. She wanted to share that feeling with him, the romance of the journey, the atmosphere of displacement, the time to think. She wanted him to learn to love what she loved. Anna didn't want him to flaunt his wealth, especially since it wasn't really his. He inherited it. The least he could do was preserve what his father built. Only then could he say he was worth something. For now, Carter was just a spoiled rich kid who had gotten lucky enough to meet a woman like her. And why a rich kid? Because Carter didn't have a mother. and in a way that brought them closer. Anna had also grown up practically without a father. She had only memories and her mother's tears. Then she found out about the betrayal. Carter grew up with memories of his mother. He didn't like to talk about it. Whenever Anna tried to bring it up, he'd get restless, pacing like a caged tiger. He'd get irritated. "Did something bad happen?" Anna asked once. "Don't ask again or we're going to fight," he answered curtly. Anna understood. She saw how much it hurt him and decided not to push. They were happy, so why reopen old wounds? If it was necessary, he would tell her when he was ready. And even if he never did, Anna wouldn't be offended. In that sense, Anna considered herself lucky. Carter was an orphan by the time they met, so there was no mother-in-law to interfere or pass judgment on their relationship. No one to say, "This girl isn't right for you." Carter was his own man. The hospital where his mother died was the one place where, for the first time, no amount of money made a difference. No status could make the ambulance go faster. No power could make the traffic jam disappear. She died. Period. Carter inherited everything at just 25. He had to take over businesses, properties, companies. The vultures appeared almost immediately. Investors, friends, with generous offers. In reality, they wanted to swallow his father's company whole. They wanted Carter to sell, take the dividends, and live a life of leisure, but he didn't give in. He wanted to continue the legacy, not just out of respect for his father's memory, but because, deep down, he was a restless person, full of energy. Sometimes, his mannerisms reminded her of someone. Anna couldn't help it. Carter reminded her of Lucas, her childhood friend, the one who disappeared. Lucas was like that. Electric, animated, full of ideas. One day he wanted to build a sled. The next, he thought he would excavate a desert to find lost cities. They had hiked for miles through the woods in search of imaginary treasures. Carter had that same spirit. With him, Anna felt like she was a child again, as if problems didn't exist. But the story of Lucas had affected Anna's psyche so deeply that for a time, she thought she was going insane. She had crying spells, panic attacks. She thought she'd end up in an institution. How could they say she invented that car when she saw it with her own eyes? Of course, she didn't know the model or the license plate. She was a child. Even now, studying medicine and having chosen to specialize in psychology, Anna knew it wasn't a hallucination. The car was there. Lucas got in and he disappeared. Since then, Anna had revisited that childhood memory countless times, and the more she thought about it, the more certain she became. It wasn't a hallucination, nor was it the invention of a traumatized mind. She really saw that car. And someone really took Lucas. The police didn't want to investigate properly. Or worse, someone might have paid them to wrap it all up, conveniently blaming the little girl. It was too convenient that the disappearance happened in an isolated place, with only 2 witnesses, one of them being a child. Anna overcame much of the trauma over time. As an adult, she understood better. Someone had been watching Lucas. Maybe they had been watching both of them, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Maybe if Anna had also gotten into that car, she wouldn't be alive today. The more she matured, the clearer this became. Lucas was taken. But why? Who would be interested in some random kid, the son of a poor mother, with no relatives, no inheritance, and no guaranteed future? Lucas's mother, Sarah, lived in mended clothes, with almost no money. Anna never knew who his father was, and as a child, she didn't ask. No one in the village talked about it. Everyone just knew she was a widow, and if she was a widow, that meant Lucas's father was dead. Simple, logical, and enough for no one to bother with the subject. That's why no one questioned it when the boy vanished. No one demanded a ransom. No one showed up demanding anything. But this logic hid an even bigger hole. Why would someone kidnap the son of such a poor woman? It made no sense. Anna began to suspect. Maybe it wasn't a typical kidnapping. Maybe someone knew Lucas. She remembered the way he had looked into the car, smiled and gotten in. A stranger doesn't get that kind of smile. This was the question that had haunted Anna since she was 11, but now her mind was consumed by another thought: the wedding. She and Carter were on their way to visit her mother and sister. Carter, however, was extremely nervous. He seemed uncomfortable, restless. Anna even joked, "You look more nervous than if you were about to land a helicopter and make a run for it." Carter had even proposed an absurd idea: to send a car to pick up her mother and sister and bring them to Chicago for the formal introduction. "What are they now, a pizza delivery?" Anna replied, laughing awkwardly. "We're going there, and if you don't want to, then I don't want to marry you." It was like a trial by fire for Carter. His childhood in a boarding school for the children of executives, the years abroad, the early loss of his mother, the sudden disappearance of his father, all of it had made him a reserved person. He didn't have many friends, and who knows, if fate hadn't crossed their paths, he might not even be alive. Anna thought about this often. Sometimes she wondered if that moment in the morgue, that unexpected encounter, wasn't somehow the universe's way of settling a debt with her after everything she had suffered. Maybe that's why Carter was so special. Maybe that's why, even though he was so different from her, he had become so important. The rhythm of the train wheels rocked her thoughts. She looked out the window and saw the fields rushing by, the small towns, the colourful houses along the roadside. She thought about what the reception would be like, how her mother would react to Carter, how her younger sister would behave. Anna wanted everything to be perfect. Even if her past had been so turbulent, the future now seemed bright. And deep down, she just wanted one thing: to finally get home. Anna arrived for her shift as usual. She was a little tired after her classes, but she was even early that day. She put her things in her locker and walked down the dark corridor to the small room where she usually spent her late-night shifts. The morgue wing was cold, as always. Everyone wore insulated rubber boots and fleece vests. Anna put hers on as she walked, buttoning up the vest along the way. In the process, the clip holding her hair came loose. Anna had long, beautiful hair, but it was hard to keep up without a good hair tie. And on that particular day, no matter how much she'd searched her apartment, she couldn't find a single one. Her roommates were always taking them. So she had used a simple clip, and that's what came undone. She stopped in the dark, silent corridor to put her hair back up in a makeshift bun. That's when she heard voices coming from the anatomy lab. Anna froze. She stood perfectly still in the dark, listening. Two men were talking, but what they were saying made no sense. She heard it clearly. They were offering a large sum of money to a morgue employee to place a living young man in one of the refrigerated chambers without logging him in, so he would freeze to death. Then they would come back for him. Anna's heart nearly leaped out of her chest. It couldn't be true. They were going to freeze someone alive. That was a crime. It was monstrous. Her first impulse was to run, to get out of there as fast as she could and go straight to the police. But if she just disappeared from her shift, the men would realize she had overheard something. They would come after her. And if they were capable of freezing someone to death, what would they do to her? She took a deep breath. Thanks to her insulated boots, her footsteps made no noise. She managed to silently backtrack to the break room, took off her shoes, changed her clothes, and slipped out of the building unnoticed. Her heart was pounding erratically. She thought about running away, but then another idea came to her. She would work her shift as normal, and the next morning, before class, she would go to the police. She'd tell them everything, ask for protection, whatever it took, as long as those men didn't find her first. She went back inside. She started humming softly, stomped her boots on the floor on purpose, made noise. She wanted the conspirators to think she had just arrived. She dropped her bag on the floor intentionally and cursed out loud to complete the act. "Who's there?" someone asked from the other side of the door. "It's me, Anna. It's my shift," she replied, trying to sound casual, as if nothing had happened, You guys can head home. I've got it from here. I'll stay a little longer, one of them replied, his voice disguised. Anna walked down the corridor a second time that day, as if it were the first. The door to the room where the men were was now closed. She sat down in a chair in the corner and waited, fear tightening its grip on her. Soon after, she heard footsteps. They were leaving. One of them even smiled at her as he said goodbye. Anna sat there for a while longer, paralyzed. She didn't know how much time had passed. It was dark, and she hadn't even turned on the light. Then a thought struck her. What if the employee had refused their offer? She thought of Mary, the woman who sometimes worked the shift with her. At first glance, she seemed like an honest person, but how could you trust anyone in a place like this? She couldn't ask directly, but she could check the logs. If all the bodies were properly recorded, everything was fine. But if she found a chamber occupied by an unrecorded body, it meant the men's plan was in motion. She went to the cabinet, took the logbook, and began to compare the numbers, chamber by chamber. And then she saw it. An extra body. There was no record for that chamber, and nobody forgets a body in the cooler for over a month. Anna was trembling, but she took a deep breath and pulled out the gurney. On it lay a young, handsome man, his eyes closed, his expression serene. But something was wrong. Those men had said he would freeze to death, but he already looked dead. Anna had to be sure. She placed a shaking hand on his neck to check for a pulse. And in that moment, he opened his eyes. Anna screamed in terror. The young man opened his eyes slowly, still very weak, but he was alive. He couldn't speak. He just looked at her, his eyes pleading for help. A desperate yet hopeful gaze. In that instant, Anna didn't think about anything else. She forgot the fear, the risk, the consequences. With trembling hands, she grabbed her cell phone and dialed 911, calling for both the police and an ambulance at the same time. What followed was a whirlwind. The ambulance arrived quickly. The police came with them. The young man was taken to a secure hospital, where he received urgent care. He was in critical condition from hypothermia, but he would survive. Anna asked to go with him. She would have been terrified to go back to that shift alone. Thankfully, they let her. Later, the police uncovered everything. The two men she had overheard were local businessmen. They had tried and failed to buy the company inherited by Carter, Anna's fiancé. When he refused to sell, the men decided to eliminate the problem. They just never expected their plan to be discovered by a regular university employee. They were arrested, and to Anna's surprise, even Mary, whom she had thought was honest, was arrested too. She was the one who was going to forget to log the body. After that, Anna never worked in the morgue again. Now she visited Carter in the hospital every day. The love between them grew there, amidst medical exams, recovery, and discoveries. Carter, who had once seemed so untouchable with his life of inherited luxury, was now by her side, not as a Prince Charming, but as a man who had been saved by an ordinary woman. The connection between them was real and intense. One day, during a conversation, Carter told her something curious. "My lucky number has always been 13. "Really? Why?" "My birthday is July 13th, he said, smiling. Anna froze. Lucas's birthday was also July 13th. It was too much of a coincidence. She fell silent. Later, she found out that Carter was the same age Lucas would be today. Another coincidence. But Anna kept it to herself. She didn't say anything about her past or about the boy who had disappeared in her childhood. She had suffered enough, and now, for the first time in her life, she felt like everything was finally going right. Carter proposed to her shortly after. Now they were on the train, heading to Anna's home to meet her mother and sister. Anna was excited, anxious to introduce her fiancé to her family, and who knows, maybe even to the town where she grew up. She peered down from the top bunk and saw Carter sleeping on the seat below. He looked peaceful. Anna watched him as if he were a miracle. What a handsome man, she thought. He looks like a Greek god. He had strong features, wavy light hair, and an athletic build. It was as if life was finally rewarding her for everything she had endured. For the first time, she couldn't wait to get home. She wanted to introduce Carter to her mother. She wanted to see the looks on her neighbors' faces. She wanted to show everyone that the girl who had been called crazy, who had been ostracized, who had lost her best friend, was now back. With love, with strength. She just wanted that, to simply return with dignity. But as the train got closer to her small town, Carter started to get more and more tense. He fidgeted in his seat, scratched the back of his neck, straightened his shirt, crossed and uncrossed his arms. Anna pretended not to notice. She understood what he was feeling. When she first arrived in Chicago, she had felt the same way, a fish out of water. Her town was no metropolis, but for Carter, it was a completely new world, a place he had never been. So Anna decided not to pay too much attention to his nervousness. The reception at home was better than she had expected. Her mother smiled the entire time, serving coffee, cakes, and cookies. She looked at Anna with a sparkle in her eyes, and from that look, Anna knew her mother approved of her fiancé. She told her how everything had happened. "Girl, you were always scared of the dead," her mother said, laughing as she washed the cups. "How did you find the courage to touch that boy?" "I guess I got over it, Mom," Anna laughed back. "In fairy tales you have Sleeping Beauty, right? Well, I found my sleeping handsome." And it was true. Anna had faced an old fear and had come out of it transformed. From a broke student, she had become the fiancée of a powerful heir, all because she had courage. That evening, Anna invited Carter for a walk through the town. "I want to show you my favorite places," she said excitedly. "My whole childhood is here." Carter hesitated. He was tired. He said he'd rather stay in, but Anna insisted. He finally gave in. As they walked along the dirt roads, past the general store, the old baseball field, and the houses with open windows, a voice shouted from behind them, "Lucas!" Carter's head snapped around instantly. Anna froze. That name, Lucas. She hadn't heard it in years. Her throat went dry. She looked back. Coming out of the general store with a grocery bag in her hand was Sarah, Lucas's mother. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes went wide. The bag slipped from her grasp. A bottle of milk shattered on the ground, leaving a white puddle in the dirt. The woman brought her hands to her chest, her voice breaking. "Lucas, my son." "Mom," Carter said, his eyes welling up with tears. Anna couldn't process anything. "What do you mean, Mom?" Carter embraced Sarah. She was kissing him, crying, clinging to him as if he were a miracle, and he was calling her Mom. People started coming out of their houses, approaching, confused, curious. A circle of neighbors began to form. Carter whispered, "Let's get out of here." Gently, he put his arm around Sarah's shoulders and guided her down the street, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Anna, stunned, followed behind. Her mind was a whirlwind. The questions were crashing into each other. Carter was Lucas, her childhood friend, the boy who disappeared. Was it possible? The age matched, the facial features could have changed, but... And the name? Carter wasn't named Lucas. Or was he? They arrived at Sarah's house. They all sat down at the table. The living room was silent, as if time had stopped. Then Carter, or Lucas, began to tell the truth. He took a deep breath. His eyes were still red, but his voice was steady. "The night before I disappeared, my mom and I had a fight. My whole life she told me my father had died, that he was a truck driver who'd had an accident on the highway. But that day, she told me the truth." Sarah lowered her head. Anna sat in silence, not knowing what to think. "She showed me a picture," Carter continued. "She said my father was actually a major businessman, the owner of a big retail chain, and that he had come back to the States after years away and wanted to meet me. Except," She didn't tell me that he had already come, that he had already been looking for me. Sarah, her voice choked with emotion, tried to justify herself. I was scared. Scared he would take you away from me. He had money, power, and all I had was you. Carter looked at her with tenderness, but also with sadness. He followed me. He saw me when I was with Anna, and he called out to me. I recognized his face from the picture. It was him, my father. He told me that my mother had sold me, that she was leaving the country, and that I was no longer useful to her. And I believed him. I was already hurt. I thought it was all true. I got in the car with him. Anna clenched her fists, her heart racing. So all of it was real. The car, the disappearance, Lucas vanishing. She hadn't invented any of it. It was never madness. It was true. He took me away and put me in a boarding school. He said it was for my safety, that my mother was dangerous. I was there for years. Then I was sent abroad, and he erased everything from my previous life. Even my name. I became Carter, but my real name is Lucas. Sarah was crying silently. Anna was too. It was as if time itself had collapsed. Carter, Lucas, looked at Anna and said, "When I saw you on that gurney in the morgue, I recognized you instantly. I wanted to say something, but I was scared. Scared you wouldn't believe me, that you'd think I was crazy, or worse, that you'd leave." Anna managed a smile through her tears. And to think I thought I was going crazy for all those years. He held her hand tightly. Now everything makes sense to me. Seeing my mom again, finding you. It's like a piece of me has come back. That night was a new beginning. In the days that followed, the entire village was in an uproar. The story spread fast. The lost boy, who was now a businessman, had returned. But none of that mattered to Anna. What mattered was knowing for certain that she wasn't crazy, that everything had really happened, and that in the end, life could still surprise you. Anna and Lucas, though she still called him Carter sometimes, got married twice. Once in the little village church, complete with a white dress and a bonfire in the backyard, and once in Chicago for their friends from college and work. Both mothers were there, happy. Their lives were transformed, but more than money, more than love, what Anna felt now was peace. After so many years of doubt, pain, fear, and guilt, there was finally peace. Because in the end, everything that had seemed impossible, that had seemed like it was all in her head, was real. And now it was in the past. She had survived, and she had won. And if you love this story of mystery, love, and long-awaited justice, make sure you subscribe to Velvet Vendetta for more.